Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol niyeh b'dvarai. Okay, good morning, Chevra. Huge apologies to anybody who's watching this later or tried to join the Zoom these past 2 days. We've been having technical difficulties. Unfortunately, we'll try to sort that out later today. Be'ezus Hashem. We jump back into Sefer Likutei Moharan with Torah Nun Tes V'siyata D'Shmaya. Today's shir is sponsored by Meechal and Yitzchak Yisrael for their father's 21st year tide, the 24th of Sivan Le'ilin Nishmas. Abi Mayri Moshe Zusha ben Yisrael Alav Hashalom. May his neshama have higher and higher aliya, and may his children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren bring him more and more Yiddishe Nachas as we grow along the journey of seeking and Be'ezus Hashem bringing the lost princess home to the binyan hashlishi b'karav v'rachamim. Also sponsored anonymously L'Refuah Shalema for Menachem Mendel ben Devera. Also sponsored by Zev Klein, Le'ilin Nishmas, his parents Revka b'rindeL Simcha and Ya'akov ben Yeshעיהו, and as a schus for shidduchim for Yiddishe Adina, Bas Elisheva Rochel, Dovid ben Fayga Kayla, Yonatan Shimon ben Hadassah, Ronit, Netanel ben Meechal Mahnaz, Noach Avram ben Rochel, Zev ben Rivka bryndel, and all the singers of Klal Yisrael. Also dedicated as a schus for Refuah Shalema for Chaim Yehoshua ben Chaya Miriam, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu should protect all of Achenu Yosh Eretz Yisrael and our chayalim and chayalot and all Yidden everywhere, and bring the world closer and closer to the Gula Shlema. B'kar b'yameinu, Be'ezus Hashem. Okay. So we continue with Torah and Tes. We finished yesterday speaking about the enigmatic inyan of Shabbos and its relationship with Igula V'Ribua. And this was in connection to what we had learned about needing to protect ourselves as we engage in kiruv and chinuch and attempting to bring ourselves closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and bring others closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We put ourselves at risk when we expose our raglayim for the purpose of trying to access those who are on the level of raglayim in order to draw them closer to Hashem and build what the Rebbe called a Meechal HaKodesh, both of which are connected to Dibur, which is connected to the end of Torah and Ches, which speaks about the necessity for V'daber Davar, for humble speech, for realizing that our speech is only carrying the message of the Tzaddik Adar. We need to protect ourselves from the klipas that could awaken and connect themselves to us on account of our engagement with those who are surrounded by klipas, whose lives are filled with forces that are preventing Hashem's light from expressing itself in full. And the way that we protect ourselves is with the aspect of hislavos, which is connected to the concept of mishpat. And we learned that there are two levels of mishpat. There's mechalkal devar of mishpat. First of all, we have to know how to speak and how to know what to say, and that's really a matana min hashemayim. But then there's adam shayfet es atzmei. Then there's the level of hispoidus. A person davens, and a person does cheshbon nefesh for themselves, and a person is constantly in touch and in tune to really be honest with themselves, especially in the context of kiruv, and to double check and triple check, and to figure out what's my motivation, where is this coming from? Is this coming from the place of wanting to be ushval ruach yismach kavod, for the purpose of bringing more of Hashem's covenant to the world, revealing kvod shemayim, or am I slipping into this level of what we spoke about at the end of Torah and Ches, which, like we said, is connected, very connected. It's one really with Torah and Tes, in a way that we haven't really seen from previous Torahs. There were really one Torah, and the Rebbe split them, but we learned over there that there's chas v'shalom the possibility of starting to take credit on our own, right? And it becomes an inyan of self-aggrandizement without really attempting ach v'rak to help other people come closer. How does a person check in with themselves? The only way is by constantly really being in touch and in tune and doing that cheshbon nefesh and spending that time every single day really thinking about what we're doing in the context of a dialogic relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. If a person does that, so then Hashem will give him the siyata d'shmaya that will enable him to then be mechalkal dvar b'mishpat and know what to say and how to say it in such a way where he can be protected. That's the ultimate goal. That's the idea. And the Rebbe told us these two aspects of mishpat are the bechina of es shabsoisai tishmayru. Two aspects of Shabbos we learned about igula v'ribua. There's a circle and there's a square, right? And we spoke about the way that this dichotomy of circle and square is related to all the different pairs of contrasting terms that we learned all the way throughout the Sefer in so many of the Torahs in so many different forms, is all connected with this igula v'ribua. And the Rebbe told us that that's the inyan of Shabbos Kodesh, why it's doubled over, the double portion of Shabbos, the Mishnah Torah, the doubled over message of the tzaddik who's battling Amalek on Friday, right? The aspect of the double portion is the bechina of igula veribua. We spoke about the Rebbe's Kiddush cup, right? How it holds those two energies. There's igula veribua deligav. Now the Rebbe continues in Eis Daled, and he goes deeper into this inyan. And the Heilige Tzaddik Schus Yagan Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael Amen V'Amen says the following. This is the deeper meaning of why it is that if a person has a Meechal Aser that falls in a way that's not nicker to a pot of mutter kosher food, and there's 60 times in the pot against that piece of Aser food, it's batal b'shishim. Right, if it happened b'diavad, not obviously you can't do it lechatchila. Says the Heilige Rebbe, shishim ze bechinas igula. Shishim is the aspect of the circle. Bechinas samach shehi igula, which is the aspect of the letter samach, which is of course gematria 60. So the shishim is the samach, and the samach is the igula. Bechinas kisei kavod, which is the aspect of the kisei kavod, the aspect of bringing kvod shamayim to the world. Bechinas ve'es malachim la kisei, which is the nekuda of the pasuk that says kings to the throne. Malchus is associated with kisei b'chinas shishim heima malachis, and malchus is associated with 60. And so that aspect of bittul b'shishim, shishim is the nekuda of kisei, the b'china of kisei kavod, marim minegdai, building the Heichal HaKodesh. V'ha iser shehi haklipa Nisbatel al yidei kisas lamishpat. The Isser, which is what we're attempting to engage with and help other people journey out of their experience of lowliness, which is the klipa, in this case the Aser, is nisbatel al yidei kisas lamishpat. The way to nullify it is through this kisas lamishpat. Shishim is going to be mevatel the Isser. When we want to help other people be mevatel the Isser in their lives, the way to do that is through the inyan of shishim. What's shishim? Shishim heima malacha, 60 queens. The bechina of the letter samach. The ein zoicher ele igula. And the inyan of shishim is the eagle as opposed to the ribua. So why is only the shishim mentioned? Right? There's no mention here of the ribua. Because we said we need both. You need the igula and the ribua, which is the aspect of the two levels of mishpat, needing to be mechalkal dvara b'mishpat, to know what to say to others, but also that a person should be doing his spodidus. Why is the ribua not mentioned? Says the Heilige Rebbe, ve'ein zeicha eli igula. All we mention here is the circle, and not ribua, ki zeb is galia. Because the aspect of igula, which is our own spodidus, is be'izgalia. That's revealed. In other words, that's something that we can relate to. That's something that we can engage with in an active state of avodah. But the square is mechusa v'igula, is hidden in the eagle. It's what powers the eagle from the inside. It's what's holding the structure together. And like I said, if you held Rabbi Nachman's cup, right, backwards, so you would see the square of the bottom base, and then it was set by the circle behind it, right? And there you have the square within the circle. And so the circle is galia, it's revealed, and that's why bittul b'shishim makes reference only to the aspect of the samach, which is the igula, because that's the aspect of our own cheshbon and nefesh slash hispodidus that we can actively engage with to make sure that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. And then the ribua is matana min hashamayim. This is the way that Likutei Nachas explains it, and the Me'al Nachal explains it based on the Likutei Nachas in that way. Right, it's mechusa b'igula. It's hidden within the circle. And the koyach of the samach comes on account of the ribua. Hainu mehamem, and that's the aspect of the letter mem. Right, mem sofit, the final mem, the end of mem. Bebechinas arba'im yakenu, the aspect of 40 malchus, right, which Chazal make 39, but in the pasuk it says 40. And that's the aspect of the square, because that's what a mem is, right? There's a samach and a mem. We spoke about this in the context of Torah Zion. Ki ha-samach mekabelas me'amem, she'ikisas lamishpat, because the samach is receiving its fortification from the mem. And both of these things need to be present. V'zeh perish mem v'samach shabaluchas b'neis hayoindim. And this, of course, is reminding us of the Gemara in Shabbos, famous Gemara Kuf Talid, which tells us that the letter mem and the letter samach in the luchas were standing b'neis. Ki yadua, the letters in the luchas were etched all the way through, which is fine for all the other letters, right? Because they're solid letters and you can etch them and you can see it the same on either side. However, when you have an akuda of a mem and a samach, which are final letters and totally square or circle, so then the only way to create the letter is by having the middle hanging. Because that's the way that you're able to know that it's a samach or a mem, right? Because it surrounds the circle point. So you need the circle, but how's the circle gonna be there, right? If it's etched all the way around the side, it has to be hanging there b'neis. It was b'neis hayu aimdim, the inner mem and the inner samach, meaning the circle and the square, aside from the fact that the samach is itself a circle and the mem is the square. For the samach, the piece that's hanging in the middle is a circle, right? Because that's what you have in a samach. For the mem, the piece that's hanging in the middle is a square. So there was very literally, right, aside from the fact that generally the samach and a mem are circle and square, the actual piece of stone that was hanging there was either a circle in the case of the samach, right, and or a square in the case of the mem, right, and that's the makar for the energies of mem and samach in all of Yiddishkeit. They were standing b'neis. Mem zeribu of a samach zeyigula haniskel el, says the Rebbe. The mem is the square, and the samach is the circle. Shabaluchas halev. And what does it mean? They were shabaluchas. Which luchas? Says the Rebbe. Yes, of course, the actual luchas that are the luchas, right, which we just spoke about. But also, it's a reference to luchas halev kameshakasu kasvim aluach libecha. It has to be an aspect of luach libecha. We have our own luach or luchas in our hearts, and you need over there to have the mem and the samach, which is the two aspects of mishpat, which we know, said the Rebbe, are associated with the leiv, because the pasuk says, "V'nasa Aaron es mishpat b'nei Yisrael al libai tamid." Mishpat is associated with leiv, and that's the aspect of the fire that we've been talking about. Ki be'eish Hashem nishpat, and that's an eish that's in the heart. Malache libai. B'neis, says the Rebbe, is a b'china Shabbos. This that they were standing b'neis is already evoking the concept of Shabbos, because Shabbos is called the b'chinas ois hila olam, right? Which could mean, like it means on a simple level, it's an eternal sign. But we know that we refer to miracles as nisim and also as oisos, right? Oisos u'moifsim. Ois is a miracle. Shabbos is connected to the concept of nes, and this whole aspect of being able to help other people draw closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu is miraculous, because it's all an inyan of L'mala Miderech HaTeva. Because Teva has people acting in accordance with their lower self, acting like a behemoth, reactive, without seichel. This aspect that a human being that's classified as a mammal, right, which some people call, a kind of animal, and then they just put another word before it, a social animal, a rational animal, but right, they're very strong that we should be called animals, right? You have to be an animal. What kind of animal are we? But it's not a kasha whether or not we're an animal, right? So this animal should be able to rise beyond its nefesh haba'amis, right, the animalistic part of us, and should rise into an aspect where we could be shoylet on that. It's a nes. It's a total nes. It's the consciousness of a horse that transmigrates into its rider. It's a pella. The whole thing is a nes. The whole thing is l'mala miderech hateva, which is why tshuva is associated with bina, right, which is 8 from the bottom. We know that teva, like we mentioned in the past, is 7, right? Olam chesed, yibana from chesed down to malchus, and then tshuva requires an inyan of l'mala mi'ateva. Tshuva means I'm ready to overcome my natural state of the lower self, and I'm able to find some gewaldige koyach to be able to transform my life. That's the inyan of Shabbos Kodesh. That's the inyan of ois hila olam, the menucha that comes as a result of being able to climb out of the teva be able to access HaKadosh Baruch Hu's light. Says the Rebbe Nois Hey V'zehu, and this is pshat in the pasuk. It's an interesting pasuk. That the pasuk before it is speaking about people who are incapable of having children. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu promises if they keep Shabbos, and if they're scrupulous and honoring and respecting Shabbos Kodesh, Hashem says, I will make for them a Yad Vashem. I will, which is the name, of course, of the famous Holocaust memorial. Yad Vashem comes from this pasuk. I will make for them a sign, a remembrance in the Beis Hamikdash. They're going to have a special place of honor, Yad Vashem, which will be for them, in a certain sense, Toiv mi banu mi banus. And Rabbi Nachman's going to explain. Even better for them, obviously we want everybody should bring children to the world, but in a certain sense will be even better for them than having had children and sons and daughters. Says the Rebbe, what's the depth of this pasuk? Again, it's in the context of Shmir Shabbos. So the Rebbe says, Yad Vashem Daika. There are two things here that you find associated with Shabbos in these psukim. Yad and Shem. And he says these two aspects and elements are reflecting Shabbos Sai, which is the doubled over aspect of Shabbos Kodesh, which is Hainu Igula V'Ribua HaNizkar La'el. It's the circle and the square. Yad is Bechinas Ribua. Says the Rebbe, Yad is the aspect of Ribua, Bechinas Mishpat and Iskala'el, which is the aspect of Mishpat that we were speaking about, but Bechinas V'Soich is B'Mishpat Yadi. The pasuk says, Hashem says, I'm holding Mishpat in my hand. And Rashi explains, in order to carry it out. And the Rebbe taught us in a previous Torah that it meant the opposite, right? The Rebbe learned, what was it in turn? Hey, I think. In the beginning, V'Soich is the Mishpat Yadi. The Rebbe learned, no, Hashem is withholding Mishpat, right? But by all accounts, Mishpat is associated with the idea of Yad. And Shem, Zebechinas Igula. Shem is the aspect of the circle. Bebechinas Yancheni B'Magle Sedek Leman Shemai. We find there's an aspect of Mishpat by Ma'agal, which is the circle. And you find there's an aspect of Mishpat by Yad, which is V'Seiches B'Mishpat Yadi. So here you have Yad and Shem are two aspects of this Bechina of Mishpat that's associated with Shabbos Kodesh, because Shabbos Sai Tishmaru, which is Igula V'Ribua. What does it all mean? Says the Rebbe, Yad. He's going to have the ability, if a person's truly connected to Shabbos Kodesh, which is the Bechina of the Tzaddik MS and the Tzaddikim. Remember, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was called An Shabbos to Kula Yoimin, right? That's how they refer to Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon's Or is Shabbos. What Shabbos? Shabbos is Ava, Tshuva me'Ava, Yiddishkeit me'Ava. Rabbi Shimon's Or is Ava b'Tanugim Ayafis u'mana'am. There's a Yiddishkeit of light and a Yiddishkeit of beauty. A shining lechtig Yiddishkeit. That's what we're speaking about here. To communicate messages that will be able to reach people, but it has to be done in the appropriate way. The Igula and the Ribua, the balance of these two things. And that's the Bechina of Yad. We want to raise up Talmidim Agunim, Lahamshech Bem Ruach Chachma, and to bring down the Ruach Chachma into their lives. Ruach Chachma Daika. Right? The Bechina of Chachma. We need Bina also, but over here we're speaking about Chachma. Yeshua ben Nun, Male Ruach Chachma. Yeshua ben Nun was filled with the spirit of Chachma, Ki Samach Moshe Yadav Alav, because Moshe Rabbeinu had been resting his hands upon him. So you see, Yadayim, or Yad, is associated with Chachma. Yad Vashem. That's Yad. Where does this koyach come from? Says the Rebbe, "Koyach hazeh yilai mibeis Hashem." This koyach comes from the Beis Hamikdash. Shema ayana chachma yotze mibeis Hashem, because the pasuk says that in Yoel that the mayana chachma flows forth from the Beis Hamikdash hashlishi ki bechachma yibane bayis. Because, like the pasuk in Mishlei says, the Beis Hamikdash will be built with chachma. Now, Chachma needs to be with Bina. So you see over here, Chachma Yibane. Yibane is the Oisias Bina. Ki b'Chachma Yibane bias, right? You need Chachma and you need Yibane, right? You need Bina. But that's Yad, is the aspect of Chachma. And then you have a shame. Hanashi Yizkel a shame Ta'iv. Then when a person is Zoicha to bring about and to raise up Talmidim Agunim, then you could have a shame Ta'iv. A name that people want to be associated with. Shekol hanafashis yisava taiva liyas nishrashim b'shmai. Where all of a sudden everybody wants to be a Berditchever, right? They put out this song, Little Berditchevers, right? It's a beautiful thing. And that it's going to be the little Berditchevers that bring Mashiach. Everybody wants to be a Berditchever, you know? Everybody wants to be associated with a tzaddik. Breslover, be connected to tzaddikin. Lias nishrashim b'shmai. Ki Hashem hu nefesh, because the shame of a person is the nefesh. B'bechinas nefesh Chaya Yehoshua, the name of a person captures their essence, captures their soul. Lias abel lias nishrashim b'nafshe, and everybody wants to be connected to a tzaddik. B'bechinas l'shimcha v'lezichrecha tavas nefesh. Our nefesh is misabe, is yearning l'shimcha v'lezichrecha, wanting to be connected to your name and to your remembrance. Zecher and shame are connected. Zecher tzaddik levracha v'shem risham yirka, right? Zecher and shame, because they want to be connected to the legacy. They want to be connected to something real. They want to be part of something that's bigger than them. They want, and a tzaddik is bigger than them. A tzaddik is a neshama klalis. So everybody wants to be associated with that, a part of that. Now, in order to be associated with this shame that is coming about on account of Yad, which is the aspect of the transference of Chachma, that when you put them together, it's Yad v'Shem, Yad being connected to the Bechina of Ribua, Shem being connected to the concept of Igula, right? Which together is the Bechina as Shabsoisai Tishmeru, Shabbos being nothing other than the embodiment of the message of the Tzadikei Emes, which is the Bechina of Abba B'Tanugim, Oinig Shabbos, Oinig Yiddishkeit, Oinig Torah, Oinig Tefillah, Oinig Tefillin, Oinig Tzitzis, right? Where Yiddishkeit becomes an inyan of Oinig, which is the Bechina of, going back again to turn in Zion, right? The Nekuda of Neder, the Nekuda of wanting it of our own accord, which is brought about through turn in Vav, which is the Bechina of even Ba'astar Shabasei Chastara, HaKadosh Baruch Hu's there, and you still have a connection with him. Of this whole consciousness, right, which is totally transformative in the deepest ways possible, the deepest healing, deepest, that comes from the great doctors, the Tzadikei Emes. So this whole Nekuda is accessed through the Bechina of Chayma, through the aspect of the wall. What does the Rebbe mean? This is the aspect of a wall. Bechinas marich af. It all has to do with the energy of patience. Sheyichbash kaisai, where a person is conquering their anger, right? There's a part of us that's very reactive. Right away we act. We don't stop to think or to pause or to chill out, and then that's kas. Kas is antithetical to the whole energy that we've just been speaking about. The whole energy we're speaking about is Shabbos Kodesh. What does the pasuk say about Shabbos Kodesh? Lo yisevaru eish b'chol mashvei seichem v'yem Shabbos. How does the Zohar Kodesh interpret that? The fire of anger. The Zohar says, very, very careful. People are so careful. Chas v'shalom, don't even just possibly bump into the light, turn on the light. Says the Zohar Kodesh, yeah, that, Chil Shabbos, right? I have to be super careful. But we have to be just as careful, says the Zohar Kodesh, about anger on Shabbos, about frustration on Shabbos, about losing our temper on Shabbos. Nebuch, there are people, really good Yidden, who mamish want to keep Shabbos properly, and are maybe shomer every tiny prat and pratim of the halachas, in the great books. But then daika, on account of their idealized vision of what a Shabbos table is supposed to look like. And they have a kid who's acting up or is not at the table. And mamish, they're Meechal Shabbos every minute because they're getting so angry. That's a Chil Shabbos. Mamish a Chil Shabbos. Right? Does it carry along the consequences? Klape Shmaya, the Beis Din Shalmata, Beis Shalmala? I don't know. But according to the Zohar, that's the side of what it means. Lo sevaru eish b'chol ma shvei yom Shabbos. If we want to keep Shabbos, it's a calm energy. It has to be an energy that's calm. Shabbos is a bechina of calm. Have to, and of course there's going to be nisyonis to that. Right? That's why Shabbos has more nisyonis. Right? Friday, Erev Shabbos is just the lead up to it. Right? Erev Shabbos, chaos. Right? Always pressure, shalom bayis stuff, frustration. You forgot to do this. You didn't do that. You did that. You didn't take the chals out of the oven. There's always sichsuchim. Why? Because we actually learned in a previous Torah, all the klippas are rising up. They're trying to have an achiza on the level of kedusha that's about to be revealed. And so there's more nisyonis. The same on Shabbos. Of course there's more nisyonis. You spend more time with family. There's going to be more challenges. Of course. Right? There's always more possibility to be frustrated and upset. And that's the avodah. Right? That's the avodah on Shabbos Kodesh. To work on this loy sevaru eish b'chol ma shvei yom Shabbos. Not to kindle the fire of anger. Says the Heilige Rebbe, the energy that we're speaking about, the energy of Ava b'tanugim, is a Yiddishkeit of calm. It's a Yiddishkeit of patience. Bechinas marech af, arichas apayim, sheyichboish kaisai, where a person is able to conquer their anger. And the Heilige Rebbe says something phenomenal and fascinating. Ki ashir usukvishas kas bechina achas, because wealth and patience is one nekuda, says the Rebbe. Says the Rebbe, financial success and guarding yourself from anger is one thing, v'nikram chayma, and together they are called a wall. Ki mishuhu mekalkal chayma shel ashiras, because a person who blemishes the wall, in other words, the security of ashiras, v'lekach la'atzme kas v'chema, and instead is taking for him or herself anger and chema and wrath, nechayma oise chema. He takes away the vav of chayma, which is always the inyan of chibur to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the inyan of hamshacha, the inyan of an open channel. That's what a vav is, right? The vav hachibur, that is the bond between two words, Moshe v'Aaron, right? So it connects two aspects: the bechina of the consciousness of the tzaddik, who's the nekuda of the letter vav, who's man the achid b'shmaya v'ara, who unifies heaven and earth. The vav is gone, and what you have instead is chema. Well, what's the kesher between wealth and anger? Kishnei misitra the smala, because they both have to do with the left side. Sitra the smala. Kamashakasa the pasuk Yirmiyahu says mitzafain tipasach hara, ra, which we know is associated with Gehenna, which the Gemara tells us is associated with anger, like it says in Igaris Ramban. That's ra, and that emerges from tzafain. And tzafain, as the Mefarshim explained here, is associated with the bechina of small, the left-hand side. Uksiv, and the other pasuk in Iyah says mitzafain zav yaseh. Gold emerges from the place of tzafain. So anger and gold are connected. These two things are connected, but they have an adverse relationship. When a person is able to guard themselves from anger, so then you open the channel of that particular place in the spiritual realms, and Ashiris is able to flow. The Ashiris hi chayma, and Ashiris is associated with a wall. Kamashikasav hayin ashir kiryas uzay, ukechaymin is gava bimaskisay. Wealthy person's riches are kiryas uzay kechaymin is gava. In his mind, bimaskisay, in his imagination, in his thought, they are for him a kiryas uzay. There's something that he can rely on. It's a whole mighty city and a powerful wall. So chaymin is gava is associated with hayin ashir. But of a kasksiv, but about a person who's getting angry, it's ir prutza ein chayma. It becomes a city that's ein chayma, that has no wall. Ish asher ein ma'atzar leruchai. This is a person who has no ma'atzar leruchai, who isn't able to be responsive and to rein in their initial Fire that arises, mamish, people do temper, right away. There's a stimulus, a little bit, something's not, fire, right? Matzah l'ruchai. To work on kas means matzah l'ruchai. If we're not matzah l'ruchai, says the pasuk, it's the aspect of ir prutza ein chayma. What's chayma? We just said chayma is ashiras. So I'm blemishing the shefa of parnasa that I could have had. I'm blocking it up. When a person has financial well-being and success, they get a chayma. That's a gift from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They have the aspect of a wall. And then this wall of ashiras will be matzah lekasa. It will help that person to be in a state of calm and yishavadas, at least ideally. That's the way that it's supposed to be. A person who has that bechina of, they don't have to be so tense because it's okay. They have what they need. Sometimes the kas is miskaber, and that is mekalkel the chayma shel ashiras. That will blemish the security of financial well-being. Nimtza says the Heilige Rebbe, it emerges shahakas mazik la'ashiras. Anger is damaging for wealth. There's a great example, by the way, of we speak about Sefer Amidus, where the Rebbe just has these pithy one-liners, right? So everything that we just learned now, all you'd see in Sefer Amidus is kas is mazik la'ashiras, right? And he would not explain it. There's no chazal that says such a thing explicitly, and then it took the tzaddikim really to do all this work. And over here you open up Likutei, so it opens up. You understand, chayma, and kas is associated with this, and ashir is associated with it, and psukim, remazim. That's the deeper work that's under the hood. Here the Rebbe says a remarkable thing. So listen to this carefully. I have this underlined 3 times with an exclamation point on the side. I mean, this is so important. When the Yetzer Hara gives a person an isayan that he should get angry, sheyichos, yeda, the person should remember and should know, right in that minute, there's a sachmamin that was approved min hashamayim that's coming down through the pipeline. And right now, you're going to ruin it, chas v'shalom, by blocking up the channel because you're getting angry and blemishing the chayma because Ir prutza ein chayma is a isha she'ei matzah l'ruchai? Or are we going to preserve it with the consciousness of the tzaddikim, with the consciousness of Shabbos Kodesh, of loisavar eish b'chol mashveisechem yem HaShabbos, of the nekuda v'igula v'ribua and mishpat and ava b'tanugim, of arichas apayim, and then you allow the ashiras to flow, which is the nekuda of Hayin Asher Kiryas Uzay or Kachayman is Gava. Which one will it be? Says the Rebbe, there's a Sach Mamin that's coming down. It's mamish. It's in the pipeline. Another client, another deal, another job, whatever it is. However a person is making parnasa. There's parnasa that's coming down. And the Satan's trying to get in the way to block up the channel. He gives a person an isayin. And what's beautiful about this is that you could explain all of Rabbi Nachman on a metaphysical way, but it's also very, very practical. A person who's getting angry all the time, people don't want to work with him. It's very simple. A person who's calm, a person who's pleasant, a person who's patient, a person who has a good energy, it's a different story. So on a very practical level, it works this way also. Then you avoid issues and sichsuchim and splits in business relationships and partners and clients and fighting. And it says there, but it's a very practical thing. You have good customer service, you get more clients. That's just the way it goes. I think, if I'm not mistaken, that's how Amazon really built their whole, because their customer service off the charts, right? They'll let you return anything, and and they're so accommodating. Now they can afford to be, right? But in the beginning, that's the way you build a company. You do a good job. What does it mean, a good job? If you do a good job, but you're a jerk, right, about it, it's not a good job. People are not going to hire you. But if you have a pleasant way, then even if you don't do such a good job, people are still going to hire you again, right? Because I'm sure you'll do a good job also. But people, you understand, it becomes about the relationship. It's something way, way beyond. So you could explain this on a very pragmatic level also, and I'm sure it's true on both levels. Lehepech, I think it's true on a pragmatic level only because it's true on a metaphysical level, and that's the way it sort of copies over into the Olam Ha'asiyah. But says the Rebbe, this is the klal. The ikar shmiras Hashem, and the primary guarding of a person's name, which is their identity, shmiras hanefesh, which is guarding their soul, is eina ela sheyishmer mikas. Is that a person needs to guard themselves from anger. Because the Zohar Kodesh tells us, commenting on the pasuk, that a person's nefesh is toirev ba'apoy, is torn apart on account of their on account of their anger. There's nothing that causes a person's neshama to be mistalik like kas. In a moment that a person's bekas, they're a behema in that moment. Right? Not in a pejorative sense, like, oh, they're an animal. The animalistic part is misgaber. And the human part, which is the higher part, which is associated with calm and with breath and with pausing, which is what Shabbos is. It's a bechina of pausing before the next 6 days of the week, right? Shabbos is a responsive spirit, right? In this sense, Shabbos is the pinnacle of the opposite of what kas is. Because kas is that I'm not stopping for a minute to think and to consider how am I going to act, and therefore how am I going to speak, and how am I going to. You have to stop. You have to pause. That's what Shabbos is. Shabbos is the pause, right? 6 days, and then we would just flow right back into the next 6 days without having Shabbos. But Shabbos is the difference between reaction and response. That's what Shabbos Kodesh is. I'm about to go into 6 more days of my life. I have to stop first. I have to stop and I have to pause and I have to reflect and I have to think, what is the tachlis maaseh shemayim va'aretz, right? Because Shabbos is a little bit of a hint of the Yom Shekulah Shabbos. In other words, Shabbos puts me in touch with really what I'm supposed to be toiling for. What is this next 6 days, which is Keneged the Sheishes Alfei Shana, which is all about Kasher Pasal Tamitar Mutar Asur, which is about the Eitz Hadas Toivera, which is about Biburim. What for? And the answer is the Yom Shekulah Shabbos. What helps me connect to that consciousness so that I can be mamshich, the spirit of Shabbos, weiter into the 6 days of the week, in the Bechina of Zachreu Me'echad B'Shabbos, Hayoim Yoim, right? Every single day, Me Shabbos Kodesh. How do you do that? By pausing and having that 25-hour period of being able to stop and to bask in the light of responsiveness. That means that a person's an Adam. That means that a person is fully embodied from the standpoint of their identity. However, when a person is bekas, then they lose a part of their soul. The neshama is nostalgic. When a person works on this inyan, it is so important to work on this inyan, to really be conscious of it, and to really to put avodah into it. This is the work. We could learn Likutei the whole time. It's the work. It's putting it into practice. That's the nekuda. To mamish, really think about this, and to do the cheshbon hanefesh, and to really think, how can I put this into practice? When a person is able to guard themselves from this reactive, knee-jerk reaction within of kas, and then they stop, and thereby they're magdal the chayma ashalashiros, and therefore they protect their parnasa and parnasa's benakal, and that itself, right, gives them the ability to act more with kas and patience and marech af. So their parnasa is thriving because they've changed their whole energy. This itself will weiter increase their reputation, increase their name, increase their nefesh. As I call on nefashos te'evum li'kol b'nafshe. Then weiter, that gives people another reason to want to come close and to be connected and to gain from this person. It's a special nekuda, right? People who have money, right, who are also mashpiyim. There's like a special appeal, right? It's like from them you could hear Torah because they're not like shlemazelniks, like they can't get another job, Like I think it's probably well known that the 2 biggest magidei shir, right, in the world today, in Daf Yomi, are both independently wealthy people. Just happens to be, right? That's public knowledge. There's an inyan of that. There's an akuda of that, right? They're relatable. So from the standpoint of Balabatim, who when they want to hear Torah from somebody, in their mind, what success means is financial well-being. They see 2 people build successful businesses, right? Both businessmen wealthy people. So then you say, there's a want to be connected with that. It increases the appeal. There's that extra level of attraction. Interestingly enough, Reb Nosson said that when he said what attracted him first by Rabbi Nachman was the silverware on the table. He saw that, which is interesting. Just yesterday, I showed you the picture of the kais. I don't know, relative to what Reb Nosson was used to, that's like fancy silverware. But maybe he saw something else. I mean, the chair that Rabbi Nachman had, has, because it's still there in Breslov Meechal, you can see the chair. It's a phenomenal thing. Is taka magnificent? But Reb Nosson says that's what caught his attention at first. That's what it was aesthetically nice, and that's a nakuda. There's something real to that. But the Rebbe says over here, yes, kol hanafashos sharshim ba'ashiras. The reason why on a deeper level is our nefashos are synonymous with ashiras, with wealth. Which is speaking about a pile, right? You have to pay that day. But the pasuk describes he's relying on that pay, and it was for that pay that noises nafshe. He worked so hard that day, right? But the Rebbe says you can learn it in a deeper way. The love toward the mashpia, toward the person who's paying, toward the person who has the funds to hire the pile, noises nafshe. Everybody carries their soul toward the ashir. Because in some deep subliminal, subconscious, spiritual sense, we know that our nefesh has shaykhis with the inyan of ashiras. Because they come from the same place. Bishvil zeh, says the Rebbe, that's why hagoizel mamin Yisrael ki'ilu goizel es nafshay. That's why it says the Gemara Baba Kama that a person who steals money from somebody else, it's like you kidnapped him. It's like you stole him away. Nafesh. Their theft was considered like the theft of a soul, because there's synonymity between the makar of ashiras, like we've learned in previous tires, that comes from an incredibly lofty place, the bechina of zav, and of kesef and zav and achayshas, the bechina of chesed, gvura, and tiferes, the avos hakdoshim, the whole inyan, like we've spoken about at length in the past, of money representing value, right, currency, and souls being the greatest value there is. Money makes the world go round. Souls make the world go round. If we didn't have hands to exchange money and people who wanted to buy and sell, so then there would be no money. It's not moving anywhere, right? It's the people, but there's an inyan of value in money. That's what money is, a very deep thing. So b'shvil zeh, for this reason, hakol te'evim l'karev atzmim la'ashir. Everybody wants to get close to an ashir. So on one level, it's because, well, yeah, maybe they think, he'll just give gifts to his friends because he has so much anyway, so you never know what you might gain by hanging around with an ashir. But there's something much deeper. Kisham shirish nafsham. Because on deepest level, there's a certain kedusha that an ashir has. There's a certain kedusha. There's a certain amassing of value that could be used in a very, very holy way, if it's used in a holy, elevated way. And there's a lot of nefesh energy in that place. So Nimsa, says the Rebbe, it emerges that a person who is zoiche to raise up students who are full of chachma, and the chachma is connected to bina because bechachma yibane bayis, and that's chachma and bina together, the igula v'rebua deligav, having both. V'zacha sheyikalu b'nafshei nafshei shel rabim, and has had the privilege of having his own soul inclusive of other souls. He becomes a little bit of an akuda of a neshama klalis, even though the neshama klalis of klalius, he's still lower down in the hierarchy. Like we said, there's a hierarchy of malachim, there's a hierarchy of souls. We learned in Torah Nun Vav in the beginning about Malchus, and the Rebbe said there's Sari Meis, there's Sari Alafim, and the Sari, right, and the Sari Alafim, Sari Meis, Sari Asaris, which are the Bechina of the tree, and then there are branches, there are twigs, there are, right, the little leaves, and so that's the fractal system. But in a certain sense, as a person grows and as a person spreads and as a person is able to reach more people, because this is his mission that each and every one of us should have to try to bring more Kedusha to the world, what happens is there are souls that are included within your own soul. So this v'zacha she'yikalu b'nafshe nefashel shel rabim, this that on account of ashirus that we're speaking about, that comes as a result of arichas hapayim, that itself is the aspect of the whole energy that we've been speaking about of Shabbos Kodesh, and the tzaddikim amitim, and ava b'tanugim, and a Yiddishkeit of einig, an einig Shabbos, of tshuva me'ava. And that brings ashirus into the person's life. On account of all of this, he's raising up tremendous talmidim. Says the Rebbe, Bavada is tov mi banim uvanos. In a certain sense, this is greater than sons and daughters. Ki banim uvanos he mu'atim, because you can only have so many sons and daughters. But talmidim ve'elohim merubim, you raise up whole generation, right? The Lubavitcher Rebbe Kiyadui didn't have any biological children, but he felt that all of his chassidim were his family. Mamish. How many children could he have had, right? What's the max? A person, mamish, 17, 18, 19, like, how many chassidim does the Lubavitcher Rebbe have? Tens and tens and tens and tens of thousands. So in a bechina mesuyemet, right? Obviously, it's not like biological children, it's nothing like having children, but in a certain sense, that's the nekuda of toiv mi banim ubanas. The kulam mekablim chiyas mimenu ki'ilu yilada, and they're all receiving their chiyas from him. It's ki'ilu he gave birth to them. So that's pshat in the pasuk that we learned earlier, right on the top. The aspect of Nasati lahem bebeisi ubechaymoisai Yad and Shem toiv mi banim u'mibanos. Says the Rebbe, it's all in this pasuk here. Yad and Shem igula v'ribua mashapsoisai, two aspects of mishpat. Uvechaymoisai, which is the result of bringing the vav into chema, producing chema, arichas hapayim, ashirus. And then toiv mi banim u'mibanos, that gives the person this deeper ability to be able to spread the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And there was this clip that went around from the Yanuka that got him in big trouble. They made a whole expose documentary in Eretz Yisrael and these terrible statements that he made, where he was speaking about how he wanted wealth, he wanted great wealth, right? And a secular mind can't understand this, because the way that they interpret it is it's pashnish. Look, all he's into is money. They can't fathom anything. They can't fathom what they can't fathom. They can't, because they don't understand any of these dynamics or any of this. Can't even understand what they don't understand. First of all, he was just saying he didn't want to be controlled by donors, which is, I think, a generally understandable thing. I'm saying that. So he said, I want all the ashirus in the world, but on a deeper level, of course, because they don't know Likutei Torah and Tess. We're about to learn Torah Samach, which is a direct extension of this. I don't want to give it away, but we'll get to there. But the Rebbe says in the beginning of Torah Samach, a person needs kol hain da alma. The Rebbe says you need all the money in the world in order to achieve certain levels of hispainus, certain levels of understanding. That's what he meant, obviously, but take things out of context. You don't understand things properly, and you can flip everything, and then they put some dramatic music behind it and some pictures that make him look very evil. I mean, you could do that to anybody about anything, and all of a sudden it mamish flips everybody's opinion. That's how media works. It's all sheker v'chazav, or a lot of it is. It's terrible. It's mamish terrible, and then all of a sudden you start thinking in your head, oh my goodness, and people reaching out to me, did you see what they put out about the Yanuka? Oh, horrible things. You have to understand. Once you look at this, chema, the Rebbe says it explicitly. Of course, he was referring to Torah and Tess and more Torah Samach, because he was literally quoting Torah Samach. There's an inyan of Ashirus, but it's about being marbek fayt shemayim. And to be able to really fathom that if that is all the person cares about, and that's part of the prescription here, because the Rebbe says that's the way that you're going to be able to attract more people, is by doing something of magnificence and actually having this perception on the part of people to look and say, this is someone I want to get close to. For some people, they don't need that, because they'll just see a person that they feel is worth getting close to. So Yar Shemayim, a person who's is connected and davens properly and learns properly and is serving Hashem properly. So, but to other people, this is what draws them. So Tzaddik says, I want to have Ashir, so I want to be able to reach everybody. So V'zeh Perish, with this we'll finish for today. V'avarechecha v'agadla shemecha. I will bless you and make your name great. Perish Rashi, va'avarechecha b'mamoin. I will bless you with money. And then when a person has ashiras, va'agadla shemecha. What's the shem is nefesh? That increases a person's nefesh and enables them to be able to reach more nefashis. Ki ikar gidol hashem v'hanefesh v'alidei ashiras kaniskar le'el. Because the primary gathering of a person's and magnification of a person's nefesh is on account of ashiras. And I just have written here on the bottom, the pasuk says, Heref me'af va'azav chema. Let go of anger and forsake wrath, or let go of wrath and forsake anger. It's a pasuk in Tehillim, in Kabet Olam Zayin, pasuk ches, and the Rosh Tevis, you can't make this stuff up, of Heref me'af va'azav chema, forsake wrath and let go of anger, is Rosh Tevis Chayma. Chayma. Heref me'af va'azev chayma. This gives us the chayma that we want. This is the hashiras. And so we take away a lot of things from here, but just on the basic level, when we have nisyonis, you stop for a second and just remember, if nothing else stops you, remember this. Just have dollar signs, flashing in front of your eyes, so they're about to send you a sachmam into your bank account. Whether that transaction goes through or not is depending on whether or not you're able to be Oymeh B'Nisayin. We should be able to be Oymeh B'Nisayin, where we should have a lot of Nisyanis, because we should have a lot of Shefa coming down the pipelines. We should be able to connect to the Ruach of the Tzaddikim, the energy of Shabbos Kodesh, Loi Sivaru Eish B'Chomesh V'Seichem, to be able to guard ourselves and thereby to have the Parnasa we need only so that we can continue to be Marbek Kvayt Shemaim, to raise Talmidim Agunim. ואתה האב שלי שכל כך אוהב אותי, האב שלי מלך חי וקיים על כל נשימה שאני